Have you thought about buying or selling a home, but you're not really sure what the market conditions are? Well, I'm here to answer some of those questions. I'm Brenda Hines, and I'm the managing broker of the Stables Realty Group. Our office is located in Murray, Kentucky, which is in Calloway County. Calloway County is the far western side of the state of Kentucky, near Kentucky Lake. The Kentucky Lake is right beside land between the Lakes National Recreation Area, which is a 171,000 acre national nature reserve. It's a great place to live, and it's a great place to buy or sell property. Now, we cover other areas. So if you watch this video and you want to know about a different market in Western Kentucky or Northern Middle Tennessee around Clarksville, then please reach out because we're happy to share that information too. But today we want to focus on 2025 and the real estate activity specifically in Calloway County, although we're going to touch on a few surrounding counties. So I'm going to share my screen and get right to the information. I hope that this is helpful to you as you're considering whether you want to buy or sell a house in 2026. And we'd love to help you with that. I want to start with some information from the National Association of Realtors. And this is gathered from their 2025 profile of home buyers and home sellers. Now, there was some historic information, numbers that we hadn't really seen before that I think are relevant to our discussion today. And that is the number of first-time home buyers was at an all-time low. So it's 21%, and we typically see that number being much higher. The median age of those first-time home buyers was 40, which is also an all-time high. So we often think about people graduating from college, starting their first jobs, and then buying a home. But that American dream seems to have been postponed a little bit for some of the people that are at least included in those 2025 purchases. 10% was the average down payment of first-time home buyers, and that is an all-time high since 1989. So it looks to me like people are saving more money to buy or make an investment before they purchase their first home. Repeat buyers had a median age of 62, which was an all-time high. So people are starting to think of purchasing as they're heading into to retirement. And many times we find as we have discussions with those buyers that they're downsizing or they're perhaps moving to retire to a place that they really want to be, like near a beautiful lake that we have. And also their needs have really changed from when they might have had more people living in their household 20 years before. 23% is the average down payment of those repeat buyers, and that is an all-time high since 2003. Now, one of the reasons that they come to us with a larger down payment, and we're going to talk about this with cash offers in just a minute, is because we've had such appreciation over the past few years that they are able to have more equity that they can bring from selling their current home into their future home. 24% of all buyers had children under the age of 18, and that was an all-time low. And that kind of goes along with this first-time buyer statistics of those first-time buyers being a little bit older than we've seen in the past. And sellers stayed in their home for an average of 11 years, which is an all-time high. Now, I watch these statistics all the time, and typically that time that someone owns a house is between 7 to 10 years. So we've seen that number creep up, but you're going to understand why as I cover some of these statistics. Now, the average homeowner purchases about 3 homes in their lifetime. So that tells us that this is not something that you do every day. And so that's why having this information might help you decide if this is the right time for you to make that decision. Now, of course, we hope that if you make that decision and you're somewhere in Western Kentucky or North Middle Tennessee, that you give us a call because we'd be glad to dial down this information specifically for you and make it relevant to the area that you live in. So all cash buyers was also at a high in the last couple of years. So we saw that number stabilize between 2024 and 2025 at 26%. And so I think that this is an important number because it again relates to that equity position. People are able to sell their homes for more than they paid for them. And you're going to see some pretty staggering numbers as we continue. And because of that, they're able to put more cash into their future home. And so that kind of outweighs like some people waiting for interest rates to fall a little bit because they know that they've got more equity to put in their home from their future purchase. Having trouble getting my slide to advance there. Right. So 30-year fixed mortgage rates between 1982 and 2025 paint a picture that might be a little surprising to some of you. And so we think about 2024, 2025 having higher interest rates. But if you look at this chart, you're going to see that still our interest rates are the lowest that they've been since about or they've not been higher than they are right now since about 2005 or so. And that's because the 30-year norm for interest rates is about 8.1%. And we kind of got close to 8.1% in early 2024, but we've kind of fallen down since then. And when I'm talking to you here at the end of January of 2026, we actually have the lowest interest rate that we've had in 3 years. So that 3-year period right there when interest rates kind of popped up at the end of the pandemic to high sevens, low eights. They've continued to fall down. And so now we're kind of around a 6% interest rate, a little bit above 6, or we've even seen some buyers qualify slightly under 6%. Now, your interest rate is always going to depend on several factors. One, the type of program that you're looking at. So what type of loan you're getting, whether that's a conventional loan, an FHA loan, a USDA loan, or a VA loan for veterans. It can also vary based on your credit score. So it's really important to make sure that you talk with a lender early on if you're thinking about purchasing a home, to make sure that you do everything that you can to put yourself in the most positive position for your interest rate to be the best that it can possibly be. It also depends on how much money you're putting down and a variety of other factors like your debt to income ratio. So a lender can give you a pre-qualification that gives you a picture of what your credit score will be based on the house that you intend to purchase. But the thing that I really want you to gain from this here is that we're not really waiting for interest rates to come down, because respective of the past 30 years, you can see from this that they are actually a lot lower than they have been historically. The first home that I bought was during this period that they're higher than they were now. And that seemed really, really low compared to where they've been in 1983 when I graduated from college. We take a closer look at the last 5 years, though, and I understand where that concern's coming from, because historically, over the last 5 years, our interest rates are a little bit higher than they've been. You can see that we actually hit a little bit below 3%, sub 3, in late 2021, and then they topped over a little 8% as an average before coming to rest where they are now. And so I think that they're even lower than when I grabbed this chart, because now we can sort of see them high in that high sixes, or I'm sorry, low sixes, and even the high fives, depending, of course, on your specific situation to determine what your interest rate would be. But the good news here is that interest rates are lower than they've been. And it's a great time to buy, because the appreciation factors show us that the market's not appreciating at the rate that it was during this period that interest rates were really, really low. So it's kind of a pros and cons kind of thing. So you might have been able to get a 3% interest rate, but you were probably competing with 10 other buyers who wanted to purchase the same home. And so you may have had to actually pay a little bit above what it was listed for, or make some concessions like not asking for any repairs, or not paying above the appraised amount in order to get that home. So now we have a more balanced market that kind of is at the point in most price points in our area that it doesn't favor a buyer or a seller, but it's an equal playing field for all. So let's look at what's for sale here in Calloway County. And you can see that we have 4.18 months of inventory. So a month of inventory is a way that we measure how fast the market is moving. So 4.18 months means that in our market in general, not breaking it down to a specific price point, it would normally take 4 months for a property to sell if nothing else entered the market and everything continued to sell at the rate that it was currently selling. Now, we know that new listings are going to hit the market, so this number is always changing, but this gives you a really good indication of where you are on the market, and whether it's a seller's market, a balanced market, or a buyer's market. Now, you can see right here that the median sold price in Calloway County is $230,000. So for all of my friends who are watching in Nashville, because I also have worked in that Nashville market and still there, you're going to be shocked by that, because in Nashville, Tennessee, just 2 hours away, you can't buy anything for $230,000 that you would consider a great investment. I shouldn't say you can buy anything. There are things, but typically that median sold price is much higher than the $230,000 that we're looking for here. And that means that we've had a lot of people move into our area from outside those more urban areas, realizing that they can get a great investment. One other plug for Murray, Kentucky is we have 5 times been voted the friendliest small town in the United States. And so that's one of the reasons I moved back home to Murray, where my family grew up and where I'd lived previously, because it is such a friendly place to live with beautiful scenery, and we've got great resources. We've got great schools. There are a lot of things that are attracting people to the area, and that median sold price of 230,000 is just one of them. But you can see that right now, in general, we are operating at the high point of that seller's market. Now, a balanced market is where a buyer or a seller really doesn't have an advantage. And so we're kind of trending toward that. But where we are right now is a really good position, whether you're a seller or you're a buyer. Now, if you're a seller, you may look at this and think, my house is going to sell just like that. It's going to sell really quickly, and I'm going to move on to my next property in no time at all. And that could be true if you're close to that $230,000 median sold price. If you're on the higher end of the inventory that we have here available, it might take a little bit longer. So let's explore a little bit more. This 4.18 months of inventory has gone up in the last month by 6.1%, and the 12-month change is 20%, meaning that at the start of 2025, we were looking more at about a 3.2 or 3.3 months of inventory. That makes a little bit of difference, and you can see sort of where we were last year. But the months of inventory was really, really down in 21 and 22. So meaning that people had to do things that they normally wouldn't have to do as buyers, like making those offers contingent on having no repairs or contingent on paying above the appraisal. So as we go into more balanced market, it's really a great place for buyers to look. And it's also still an even playing field for sellers in this market. So again, months of inventory means if nothing new is listed and everything continues to sell at the current rate, how many months will it take for everything to sell? And that determines the temperature of our market. So 0 to 5 months is a seller's market, 5 to 6 months is a balanced market, and 6 or more months is generally considered to be a buyer's market. So if we look at Calloway County in general, we see that our months of inventory is 4.18. If we look between $200,000 and $300,000, we've only got 3 months of inventory. But right now we have a lot of properties on the market that are a little bit higher than our median sold price and our median home estimated home value. And so we have 16 months of inventory between $400,000 and $500,000. Now, if you've got a house to sell and you think that it's going to be in that price range, don't fear. There are some great things that we can do to kind of put you at the top of mind. But that's information that you need before you put your home on the market to kind of set that expectation, and so that you can have a realistic vision of how long it might take your house to sell and some things that you might need to do in order to attract a buyer, like tweaking a few things, in terms of furniture arrangement or updating it just a little bit. And we typically don't go into a house and say you need to paint the walls and replace the carpet and do those major renovations. There are times that we feel like you're going to get that money that you've invested in those improvements back. But most of the time, we're pretty moderate in saying that. And we typically don't ask sellers to spend a lot of money getting their house ready for the market, because we're still in a really good position with that 4.18 months of inventory. If we do encourage a seller to do those things, it's typically because we have experience with that one specific item, and we know that a buyer is going to see the home in a different light if that one room has new floor covering, or if you change that bright umber orange paint to a slightly more muted color. But that's why it's great to have a real estate professional who knows that local market and knows what buyers are looking for. So again, you can see that our average listing price is $400,141, but our median sold price in 2025 was only $230,000, and our median home value as of December 31st, 2025 was $247,390. So you can kind of start to see that our balance and our market might not be the way we want it to be right now, and that we have more opportunities for buyers at higher price points than we do at where our market typically lands, where people typically buy. And that causes a little bit of unbalance for us there. But we can definitely work with you. We just want to set the expectation that it might take a little bit longer if you have those higher priced homes in our market. So let's look at what's for sale versus what has sold. So if you look at the graph going back for the last 12 months, you can see that our inventory has gradually increased throughout the year. The top bar is the number of listings that we have, and the bottom bar is the number of sales that we've had. So you can see that we definitely are a little bit more out of balance than we've been even starting comparing back a year ago in February of 2025 in terms of the number of listings that we have relevant to the number of sales that we have. Although that ratio might be a little bit off a little bit now. Again, that's why a great realtor can really help you with some of those tweaks to make sure that your house is the one that gets looked at. And that's not only about tweaks that you do in the house, that's also us stepping up our efforts for marketing. And so if you follow us on Facebook, on Stables Realty Group Facebook page, you can see that we're very, very active with video marketing. We're very intentional in making sure that your property is in the forefront of buyers' minds. We're really good at sharing those on local Facebook groups as well as nationwide Facebook groups, particular to the type of home you have, whether it's a lake property or a barn dominium or a tiny home or a cottage or your typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch right in the city of Murray. There are things that we really look for as unique marketing opportunities to make sure that your house is in front of buyers, regardless of whether they're local to us or whether they're out of state or out of area. And it's those last few months that we want to pay particular attention to. And we've been really great working with our sellers. We've been super patient and understanding to understand that we're dealing with market conditions that are a little bit different than they were even a year ago. And so it might take a little more time and patience. As a buyer, that means it's a great opportunity for you because you have sellers who are just waiting on you to bring an offer. So when supply starts to outpace demand, the days on the market goes up, the months of inventory goes up, and the list price to sales price ratio goes down. Sales prices also can go down. So eventually the appreciation of home prices slows or property values might even start to decline. But we're not seeing that here in our market in Calloway County. So that's great news. If you're watching this video and you have no intention of buying or selling in the short term or the next 2 or 3 years, we've got a really stable market right now where we are appreciating at a sustainable rate. And that's what's really important. The appreciation at 10 or 15% per year just wasn't sustainable. And so eventually that was going to cause a correction in the market. And we've seen that in other markets that we serve, but we're not seeing that here in Calloway County, Kentucky. So it feels like things are starting to change based on the showing activity of the past few weeks. We've gotten more phone calls. Our listings have gotten more showings. Things that were on the market for 3 months all started going under contract. So we think that those temporary stalls in the market that we saw in the fourth quarter of 2025 could be related to interest rate fatigue. Buyers just thinking, I'm tired of paying 7%. I'm going to wait till rates come down. When they bounced down a little bit into the low sixes in 2026, they jumped in their cars and said, let's start driving around looking for a house. The government shutdown in 2025 also had an effect on the market. Now, we could certainly close most types of loans. There were a few like USDA that created an issue and we couldn't close those while the government was shut down. But even for normal buyers getting loans, there were things that were more difficult for them. If you needed tax transcripts because you were a self-employed borrower, those were harder to get. If you needed a transcript of your student loans, that was also harder to get during the government shutdown. So we're glad that the government's reopened and we're back in business selling real estate. There are also seasonal market changes that are typical. We saw that happen a little bit earlier in 2025. We started seeing that in September, and typically we don't see that until about November. But we typically don't see the peak and strike back up in the market until maybe March, and we started seeing that in January. So we think everything just kind of shifted and happened a few months earlier, but we're back in business now. Buyers feeling like there's not any inventory. And if you're a buyer in Calloway County looking for a home that's $250,000, you may feel like there's not very much inventory. But if you're a buyer looking for a home that's $400,000 or $500,000, you're going to have a lot more to choose from than you normally have. So it just really really depends on where you're at in the market and whether you're looking for a house in town, a house with acreage, or a house on the beautiful lakes that we serve, whether you're going to see that there's a lot of inventory for you at this time or not. There is a lot of inventory, but it just doesn't always match the buyer price points for the average and the median sales prices in our area. So let's look at growth over the past year. So there was definitely a peak in 2021 when interest rates were 3%. And you could see that in 2016, we've increased all the way up. And even though we did have a little bit of a dip in 2023 and 2024, we stayed steady in 2025. And if that fourth quarter hadn't lagged behind a little bit, I think personally we probably would have hit that bar again close to where we were in 2021. But it's not just me. All the other agents that I talked to in the area also saw that fourth quarter 2025 drop off for the reasons that we've talked about. So I think 2025 was a great year, and that gives me a lot of promise about the future. We can't pay attention to 2026 yet because when I pull these stats, we're only a couple of weeks in. So we have to wait and see how 2026 goes. Now, you may have the question, is our market seasonal? We're not in Florida. Our seasons change, but they don't change as drastically as some areas might. Right now, I shouldn't say that because I'm sitting inside and I've not been outside for about a week because we have about 7 inches of snow out there and our roads are still a little bit iced over, but our market is still seasonal. And we're going to see those changes, seasonal changes in our market on some of the graphs that I'm going to show. But there's something really curious about that as well. If you look at 2022, you can see that I can kind of shape that curve that shows that we've had a market that typically is down a little bit in the winter months. In January and February, starts going down in November, and then starts going back up again. And we saw that also in 2024. But I noticed something really curious in 2025, and we didn't have that typical curve that you see. September, like I said, was really low, and we started hitting the market a little bit earlier in 2025 than I'd previously seen. So it's really exciting that maybe we didn't have as much of a seasonal impact. And if you're looking for a lake property, I'm going to tell you that winter is the best time to buy. And that's because our lakes, and we serve both Kentucky Lake as well as Lake Barkley, are flood control lakes. So that means that the water level goes up and down about 5 feet from summer pool to winter pool, with it being lowest in the winter. So it starts going up around the 1st of March, and it's typically all the way up by the 1st of May. And then starting about July 4th, the lake level starts going down, and it's usually all the way down by September. So that means if you look at a lake house in June, you may look out and see a beautiful field of water out in front of you. And then you may wake if you're vacationing and you don't go to your lake house often and you come back after Labor Day to have a celebration, you may think, what has happened? Because now I am looking at mud in front of me. And that's because you didn't realize, and maybe you didn't have help realizing that the lake level goes up and down 5 feet. And if you only had 5 feet of water in June, or if you only had 4 feet of water at your dock, that was enough to get your pontoon boat in and do all the recreational activities that you wanted to do in June. But you may find in September or October that lake is now, your dock is sitting on mud. So winter's a really great time to look for a lake property in our area just because you can see what it looks like at a full winter pool. But if you look in the summer or the spring, don't worry. We've got some great tools that we can use to help you. We actually have a metered stick that will help us measure the water depth at your dock or on the shoreline, or sometimes we've even had someone go out on a boat with a depth finder to find out what your water level is. We then compare it to what the water level is at the dam to know how much we are relevant to that winter or summer pool mark. And we can tell you as a prediction how much water you're going to have when it comes winter. We also go back to Google Earth and look at historic images on Google Earth to try to find pictures of what it looked like in January of 2019 and in January or February of 2022, so that we can give you the truest picture possible for you to imagine how much water you're going to have through the winter. And it kind of makes sense that the homes that have year-round water, which is we consider enough water at the dock to float most boats, and I generally sort of have as a hallmark, it needs to be at least 3 or 4 feet of water to truly call it year-round water. If it has that, the house is going to be worth more because that means that you can enjoy recreational boating opportunities throughout the year, not just in that 6 or 8 months that you typically have more water during the summer. So we can help you make a determination if you're a seller or if you're a buyer. The value of your property is really going to be contingent on how much water you have year round. And so that's why it's really great to have someone who lives on the lake and who understands it like I do, just to make sure that we understand what the value of your property is or the value of the property you're purchasing is based on that water level. So new pendings by week, you can see that we definitely had a lot more people visiting us and making offers toward the end of May, the 1st of June. But that kind of trailed off, as I said, the fourth quarter of last year. I think it's going to be really exciting to look at the numbers for 2026 because I think January may be one of our record months. January's looking back at the past years. You can also look for sales activity and see the number of sales that we've had for each of the years. So 2021, as you could see, definitely was the time that you wanted to be a realtor in Calloway County if you wanted to be really, really busy and have a lot of activity going on because more transactions took place in that May and June of 2021 than they did most years. We had a lot of people moving from larger areas who wanted to get away from a bigger urban area because of the experience they had in 2020 with the pandemic, and just realizing that the value is really here, that this is a great place to live, to vacation, to work, all those things. But we've remained pretty consistent throughout. And again, if you look at 2025, you don't see those numbers jump up and down as much as they did in previous years. So I think that trend's going to continue into 2026. And is our market becoming less seasonal? I think time will tell. It'll be a while before we know that. So if you're watching this video and you have no intention of being a buyer or seller, don't turn it off because now's the information that you want about how much your home is projected to be worth. And if you want that specific number, then a free service that we provide is a real estate review. That's absolutely no obligation. We start from a general snapshot of the market, maybe looking at your subdivision, maybe looking at the quadrant of the county that you live in, definitely at that price point that we expect your home to be around. And we'll give you a general snapshot of how much your house is worth. Now, why would you want this information if you're not thinking about buying or selling? There's so many reasons why. Number one, your financial planner wants access to this information and calculating your net worth. Because for most people, their home is one of the things that is the largest proportion of their general net worth. So it's great information for you to have in comparing that to your stock portfolio and your other investments. Another reason that you want to know that is to make sure that you have enough property insurance. Now, if you've not bought or sold for the last 11 years, like most sellers were in 2025, you may still have the amount of insurance that you had on your home when you bought it 11 years ago. And that is not enough insurance coverage to replace that home today. So it's important that you have that information for insurance purposes as well. If you purchased a home 5 or 6 years ago with a conventional mortgage and you put a 5% down payment, that means that you were also paying mortgage insurance. And typically it takes a little bit longer than 5 years to reach that 20% equity position where you don't have to pay that mortgage insurance on a conventional mortgage anymore. So a great reason to know how much your home is worth is we've actually helped people have enough confidence in the value of their home that they've reached out to their lender to get an appraisal and to formally go through the process of dropping that mortgage insurance. So that's another great reason to know. I could go on and do a whole video on all the reasons to know the value of your home, but I'll just stop at give us a call, and it's a free, no obligation service that we do to give you a general review of how much your property might be worth. Now, we do that without coming in and looking at it and seeing the updates that you've made to it. But if we talk and you want more information, then that's another continued free service is we could actually pay a site visit to your house so that you can get a better idea of how much your property is worth in today's market. And again, that's free, no obligation. We see ourselves as real estate advisors and as professionals who help people within the community with their real estate needs, and we're not attached to the outcome of whether that brings us business or not. So let's look at home value snapshot within Calloway County. And you can see that we have positive numbers all the way across, but we're starting to see that those numbers have changed just a little bit. So it's time to pay attention to that if you're thinking of selling when your home has stopped the very high appreciation. The last 36 months have an appreciation of 14.92%. So over 3 years, that would be almost 5% a year if you were to average that out. The last 24 months have been 4.74%. So we can tell by looking at that something happened between 24 and 36 months. We must have had about a 10% appreciation actually in that third year, and then it dropped down to about 5% or 2.5% per year over the 24 months. The last 12 months, it actually was a little bit higher, almost 3%. The last 3 months, we've gone up 1.41%. So that's healthier because that times 4 is more than the 2.95% of the last 12 months. And over the last month, we've had 0.57%. And now, if I'm throwing out a bunch of figures and I'm going too fast and you can't keep up with me, that's okay, because you don't do this every day like I do. But I'm happy to sit down, go as slowly as I need to go to help you understand specifically how your home has appreciated over the last 3, 5 years, 10 years, whatever time since you bought it. And that's great information for you to have. And you can see that we've had positive appreciation in Callaway all across the board. So even if you don't remember all the breakdowns that I just did, that's the thing that you need to take from this. We are still in a positive appreciation position in Calloway County, Kentucky. So if you look back at some numbers and you've lived in Calloway County for a while and you're in the position that maybe you've owned your home in this example about 14 years, I'm going to make your day by telling you how much more your home is worth than it was that you paid for it. Because in 2012, if you bought a home in Calloway County, the median estimated home value was $137,440. But now that median estimated home value has gone up to $247,390. So that's almost double. So it's really a lot of appreciation in a relatively short period of time. You can also see those numbers for Kentucky and for the USA as a whole. And in both cases, we've seen great appreciation. Part of that is due to those super low sub 3 or 3% interest rates that we had in late 2020 and early 2021. We do start to see that realtors have kind of caught up with the fact that maybe homes aren't appreciating as quickly as they were, even though we still have positive appreciation. We've started to make some adjustment in sales prices that have shown up over the last year, and our median sold price as well as our median list price has gone down a little bit. Let's talk for a second about what median means. So you know what an average is. If you average 10 things, you add them all up, you divide them by 10, and that's the average. Median's a little bit different. If I have 10 houses, then I'm going to take the 2 in the middle that are the same. Let's say that they're the same number, and that is the median. So it kind of factors out this one that sold for over $1 million, which is not typical for our market. And it takes out the one on this end that was only $80,000. That was a total fixer upper. So the median is usually the best number, and that's the one that's right in the middle of all the properties that we're looking at. You can see our market pricing has gone up a lot, and that even though we kind of hit the peak of sales in 2021, we kind of still kept increasing our prices in 2024. In 2025, it came down a little bit, and really, I'm not even going to pay attention to that number in 2026 yet, because we've not had enough activity to really know where that number is going to land. Now, let's look within Calloway County and the geographic distribution of property value. So this is Kentucky Lake, as I've been talking to you about before, but right on the other side of that, we have Lake Barkley, and this is the city of Cadiz that's over there. It's spelled Cadiz, but it's not Cadiz like in Spain, it's Cadiz. And so right between it, we have a 171,000 acre nature preserve called Land Between the Lakes. And it's a great place where there's really not any activity. There's not any homes over there, so that's a little bit misleading, because part of Land Between the Lakes is that there are no privately owned properties or homes over there. So Calloway County, even though it goes into Land Between the Lakes, there aren't any homes in this section there. But this section right here in the south east part of Calloway County is where I live on the lake, and that is where the most expensive homes are within our geographic area. We kind of have a lower property value there along the Tennessee state line in the city. That's closer to that would be Hazel. And then this is Graves County over here. And so along the Graves County line, property values are a little bit lower. And then this Marshall County that's above us. And in the top part of Calloway County, the northern part of Calloway County along the Marshall County border, it's a little bit lower too. With the city of Murray, Kentucky being relatively close to the median property value that we have. And Murray's right there in the middle. It's the Calloway County seat. And it's also the home to Murray State University, which is a great reason that people also come to Murray because we have a lot more opportunities in a town our size than you would normally find in a town our size because of Murray State University. You probably have heard about us because of basketball and some great players who've come from Murray State. And then last year, our baseball team made national headlines by making it to the championship, the College World Series. And although there were a lot of things about the coach mowing the grass on the field and other things that weren't quite true, it was a really cute story and brought some notoriety to Murray. We're also known for our great arts. So Murray State University has a really fine theater program and a music program. And so we have so many artistic opportunities as a result of having Murray State right at our footsteps. We've also got a great art guild that's just moving into a new building. So you have the opportunity to learn to be an artist yourself through all the classes that they teach, as well as to purchase some really great art. So Murray's a great place to be. And this is Calloway County as a whole. Looking at the month supply of inventory, this is where you see in that $400,000 to $500,000 range, we have a lot more homes that are available on the market. So our months of inventory have really peaked in that area, as you can see there. So that kind of means that there have been some price reductions. And so our list price to sales price ratio right now in Calloway County is 96.5%. So there's not really many houses listed for $100,000, but that's a really easy number for me to demonstrate math on. So I'm going to use it. That means if a house is listed for $100,000, you could typically expect it to sell for about $96,500. Active right now, as of January 11th, just a few days before this, when I pulled this information, we had 108 active listings. 59% of those had a price drop, and that 66% of them with the average price drop being 8%. And it's kind of interesting to note that for that $230,000 median sales price, that we have about $2,290 is the average square feet on the market. But remember, our average price on the market's a little bit higher now. It's at $400,000, so that could be factoring into that $2,290 square feet as well. In December of 2025, we had 21 sales. 12 of them had a price drop. That's 57% of them sold with a price drop, and that average price drop was 7%. So you can look at this chart to see the price drop amounts. The black bar represents the percentage of the price drop. And it's really curious to me that the highest percent was actually in the third quarter of 2022, when the market was still relevantly in a seller's market. And then they've kind of changed over time from that. But the top line shows the percentage of sales with a price drop. And so we can tell that we're definitely trending toward a buyer's market because more of our homes have had a price drop than historically we've seen in the past. And so that tells you the price drop by the price range, the number of active that have had a price drop, the percentage of them that have a price drop, and then the average price drop. And I know this was a lot of information to capture really quickly. If you're trying to take photos of these slides, you can stop. Just reach out to us at the Stables Realty Group. I can send the slide deck to you, or even better, we can sit down face to face over a cup of coffee, and I can explain this to you in person. Now, if you don't live in our area and you're interested in this information, we can meet on Zoom and we can go over the information that's most relevant to you. Here's our new listings and our pendings. And you can see that in the fourth quarter of 2025, they kind of trended down. So that kind of tells us to watch out because we might be heading more toward that balanced market than we've been before. Median days before it went under contract was 63. And this is the days on the market versus the percentage over asking. And you can see the relation to those two things. We're starting to kind of meet right there in the middle, which we did in 2020. Days on the market, very seasonal. Things that are listed in November, December, and January definitely take longer to sell than things that are listed in the summer. And you can see where I inserted those red lines. That's the peak, and they fall right about that January timeline in 2024, again in 2025, and then creeping up there in December of 2025. I don't have that number yet for 2026 because January is not over yet. This is the average number of days on the market, and this is for all of 2025, and this is by price point. Now, I admit I'm a numbers geek, and if you're not a numbers geek, you probably already stopped watching by now. So hang on if you are, because you speak my language, and I love to sit down and talk with you about these numbers specifically. And then this shows the average numbers of days on price range for all of 2025. Sold listings, and we've already talked about that. The median sold price in December of 2025 was 230,000. And the active listings in December 25 was 339. We're now at 400. So we've had some higher price homes hit the market, but in December of 2025, it was 339. Our new listings, we've had a median list price of 249. We've had a lot of newer, lower price listings that hit the market in December. And the asking price, you can see how that curve goes as well. Median and average listing price as well. And again, we use median most of the time. Now, this is really interesting, buyer demand by price range. So if you have that home between $100,000 and $300,000, you have much more buyer demand. So these are the number of sales in that yellow line. And then the percent of your asking price that you were able to achieve is represented in the blue bar. So this here at the 600,000 to 700,000, you can see that at the upper end of our price range, there's typically more negotiation ability to reduce that price. This is by the number of bedrooms and the percent over asking for 0 to 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or 4+ bedrooms. And I'll go through some of these quickly because this is really, really fine level details for those that are really, really interested in the number of bedrooms. But the general picture I want you to get here is if you have a 2-bedroom house that is listed at $500,000, it's going to take a longer time for it to sell because typically the median sales price by bedrooms in Calloway County is $132,000 for that 2-bedroom house, $220,000 for a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom at $330,000, and then the median sales price for a 5-bedroom is $359,000. So what is my house worth? If you don't live in Calloway County, this is still great information for you. This is from FHFA.gov, and this shows the United States as a whole, with the higher appreciation being the darker blue and the lower appreciation areas being in the red or dark orange. So you can see that right now, the state of Florida is not the best for appreciation, particularly the Gulf Coast there, with that being the Tampa and Fort Myers area. Also, California and parts of the Midwest, Colorado, those are some places that are seeing not as heavy of an appreciation picture as we're seeing in Kentucky and in this area in general. In Tennessee, we're seeing a little bit of depreciation in the Nashville area. So that's kind of right where Middle Tennessee is, Nashville and Clarksville. And if you are in the yellow, that means that you might be experiencing a little bit of negative appreciation there. So we definitely want to pay attention to that in that Nashville market. In Texas as well, even though there are a couple of pockets around some bigger cities that have a little bit of positive appreciation. And historically over since 1991, you can see this chart kind of demonstrates how house prices have done in terms of the appreciation. And so everybody knows in 2007, 2008, 2009, we had a more major correction in the market, but that was related to some lending practices that were all corrected in 2015. And So we don't expect to see such a fall in appreciation prices as we saw during that period, but we definitely saw the peak of those about 2022, 2023 nationally. Again, looking at that national curve, and there's that low part in 2007 to 2012, we can see even though that we had that blip and things came down, we're definitely heading on an upward curve. And if you look at that from 1991, you can see that your house is worth far more than it was. Let's look at Kentucky and where Kentucky falls nationally. We're actually number 16 in the states out of the 50 states in terms of our appreciation with our 1/4, and let's dial that in more specifically so you can see it being 0.74, our 1 year being 3.84, and our 5 year being 50.49, and since 1991 being 298.97. So what does that mean to you? That means in the state of Kentucky as a whole, not looking at a specific county or a specific price point, if you bought your house 5 years ago, it's typically worth about 1.5 times what it was in just 5 years ago. Since 1991, if you bought a house for $100,000 in 1991 in the state of Kentucky, it would be worth almost $300,000 now. That's a lot of equity, a lot of money in your pocket for just buying a home and holding on to it. People, and also if you bought it in 1991 and you got a 30-year mortgage and you've not refinanced it, it's probably paid off now. So whatever money you borrowed definitely has made money for you in terms of the value of your property. We are in the East South Central region, so you can see that we're in a really healthy region. In general, the East, New England, Middle Atlantic, and South Atlantic starting to struggle a little bit in terms of the price change, just relevant for 2024 to 2025. But we are in a part of the country that has really strong appreciation. Looking at Kentucky as a whole, you can see that Calloway County is down there in the green, and we've had 4.18%. Remember, the state of Kentucky over the last 12 months is 3.84, so we're outpacing the rest of Kentucky in general. And now let's look at our local area. So Callaway, Marshall, Graves, Trigg, and McCracken counties, we serve all of this area. And we're really happy to report that we've got really healthy appreciation throughout most of the area. Again, this is Callaway that we looked at. This is the part that's close to Kentucky Lake that I said that I live in. And then this is bringing Katie's over. Trigg County is pretty close to Murray. It's actually a little bit darker, so their appreciation or their median house value has gone up a little bit more even than we are. That's looking at all of those counties combined. And now let's dial down to each county just briefly so that you can see their months of inventory as well as their median sold price and some of the statistics. This is for Trigg County, which is Katie's. That's on the Lake Barkley side of our market. And the last month still has a positive change, just 0.1% with a 12-month change of 8.8%. And I wouldn't pay so much attention to that last month because we know that December 2025 was not really reflective of the sales that we had. That was a little dip. I expect that curve to be more positive trending into 2026. This is Marshall County, Kentucky, 3.84 months of inventory, really close to what it is in Callaway County. But the median sold price in Marshall County in December was much less than it was in the 230 that we saw in Callaway County. And this is Marshall County. They didn't have as much of a positive change over the past 12 months as we did in Callaway County and as we just saw in Trigg County. This is Graves County, Kentucky, and the Mayfield is the biggest city in Graves County. 4 months of inventory with a median sold price of $225 and about a 5% appreciation over the last year. This is McCracken County. So the biggest city in McCracken County is Paducah. And Paducah is one of the 15, I think, UNESCO creative cities in the United States. So it's only 45 minutes from Murray if you know the way and drive the roads at the speed limit or maybe that much above it. So we're going to say 45 minutes to an hour to downtown Paducah and the riverfront, where there's so many restaurants, and the National Quilt Museum is there. It's a really great place to be close by. So if you live in Murray, you've got Paducah an hour to your north, and you've got Nashville, Tennessee 2 hours to your south. So really great place to be, still close to a lot of things that you want to see. One of my favorite things about Paducah, if you follow food, is Chef Sarah Bradley, who was runner-up on Tournament Champions last year, has her flagship restaurant, Freight House in Paducah, Kentucky. And that you can see that Paducah has not appreciated as much as some of the counties around it have. So I know you have lots of questions. If you do, reach out to us at the Stables Realty Group. We're going to post my phone number as well as the office phone number on this. Ways to get in touch with us on our Facebook page, through our website, calling us or texting us or linking with us directly. But we'd love to be able to answer your questions. So again, I'm Brenda Hines with the Stables Realty Group, and I would love to engage with you to help you understand the market here in Western Kentucky, as well as we can explore the market in Northern Middle Tennessee around Clarksville, in Cadiz, Paducah. We have a family-run brokerage. Both my daughters, Lauren and Sarah, left teaching after more than a decade each of teaching and joined me full-time in the practice of real estate. So the three of us together have a lot of bandwidth to be able to help buyers and sellers with pretty much any time you want to see a property, and we love what we do. We want to connect with you. If you have questions, again, even if you're not thinking about buying or selling, it gives us an opportunity to do a real estate review and gives you great information that you need to make informed decisions about your housing. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.